Apple reveals its plans for the iPhone 15. What's up? I'm Royce, and this is Apple Next, where I talk about all the latest and hottest Apple news of the week. So if that sounds good to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and let's get into it. So earlier this week, Apple held its Worldwide Developer Conference, also known as WWDC, where they showed off all their new software updates that's coming later this year. And there's already a bunch of videos talking about the Apple Vision Pro and what it means for Apple's future. So I don't want to spend more time talking about that here. But what I did want to talk about is how I think with all of these announcements, Apple kind of gave us a little sneak peek into what we can expect from the iPhone 15s coming out this year. And the first hint that I think we got does have to do with the Apple Vision Pro and all the fancy new cameras that are in this thing, right? And a big feature that they showed off in their little demo video was the Apple Vision Pro's ability to take what they call spatial videos and photos. So photos that you view on the Apple Vision Pro will have a sense of depth. Same with videos, and they say that it's supposed to make you feel more immersed in those images, those moments, almost like you're reliving these memories right then and there. And that's awesome, right? But of course, the first thing I think we all thought of was like, okay, so you're really just gonna walk around with this big headset on your head and just be like filming and recording your whole family trying to capture these moments. And especially if you have a toddler like me, you know, trying to chase them around, be like, hey, hold up, let me record you. Looking like Cyclops. And thinking about that reminds me of back when Google was first trying to launch their Google Glass, which was their take on augmented reality glasses. And looking back on it now, their take was a lot less intrusive, even kind of like more social, even though we didn't really accept it at the time. But a feature that they touted was, oh yeah, record videos, shoot photos, this is gonna change photography. And of course, immediately right after that, a bunch of videos were made about how ridiculous you look trying to go up to a flower with your eyes, trying to like take photos like that. So it's easy to kind of write off that feature in the same way, just kind of like weird and gimmicky. But it instantly doesn't become as gimmicky when you think of that similar technology being added into the iPhone 15s. Most likely, this would be in the iPhone 15 Pro models and the iPhone 15 Ultra. Imagine if those phones have the ability to shoot spatial photos and videos. Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, I can still record and do things the way I would with my phone that I'm doing all the time anyway. So then that way, when the Apple Vision Pro comes out early next year and then you pay $3,500 to own it, you can now view all that stuff that you just recorded on your phone in the spatialness of reality, whatever, on your headset. So the pairing of the two makes more sense versus actually going out and trying to capture that with this big old thing on your head. And I feel like it has to go this way, right? Like that is such a marketing gold mine, and they kind of need something like this, right? Because as of now, we've heard the biggest change, other than the phones getting USB-C, maybe getting that action button, is this periscope lens that would only be reserved for the iPhone 15 Ultra, the biggest model. And that feature right now, pretty much all it does is just allow you to zoom in and it reduces blurriness, which is great, but is that gonna be enough, you know, to sell more phones and convince people to upgrade? And boom, now throw spatial video and audio in the mix, I feel more people will be at least interested, especially knowing that that feature is directly tied to another product that Apple's coming out with. And speaking of the cameras on the Apple Vision Pro, they also showed off the LiDAR camera that's on the front that's supposed to be able to literally scan your face. So then when you FaceTime with people with this thing on your head, people won't be able to see you directly, but they'll be able to see a 3D avatar representation of yourself that when you talk, it actually talks. When you move your hands, it actually moves its hands. It like tries to interpret your movements. And so this 3D avatar is like literally moving and acting like you, which is really scary. And thinking of that feature in the same way, I feel like Apple would want to maybe capitalize on that. And what if you're able to do something similar with the iPhone? So then it's like, okay, you don't have to wait for the Apple Vision Pro to come out. You can scan yourself now, get that 3D avatar going and implement it, you know, into your situation right now. And even though the phones have LiDAR scanners now, I assume there's probably something a little extra they added in there to get that like scan looking just right. So whatever that extra-ness is, they'll probably have that and can include that in the iPhone 15s. Again, probably a Pro and Ultra feature. And with these 3D avatars, it could even be a situation where these maybe start to phase out the Memojis, because as cool as the Memojis are, I feel like they're not really as big of a hit, I think, that Apple wanted. So maybe they might think, okay, well, in the future, maybe we start moving away from these like cartoony avatars and move towards maybe a more realistic representation of people. Because again, the metaverse, right? And these scans look really clean, actually. So this could be a way sometime down the line, Apple's already setting themselves up to where we all already have these hyper realistic 3D scans of ourselves that we can put in these other fake virtual worlds. And next is a new feature that's going to be exclusive to the Apple Vision Pro that they call Optic ID, which is a way to unlock the headset through them scanning your iris. And just aside from unlocking the device, this will also be used for things like, confirming Apple Pay payments. So this is something that could easily be implemented in the front camera of the iPhone 15s. And yes, in the headset, it makes sense why it would need to be able to scan your eyes instead of your face, because it can't see your whole face. It still makes sense too being on the phone, because that's just another extra layer of security, right? Because there's already a setting you can set with Face ID where it'll only unlock if it can recognize your face and if your eyes are looking directly at the camera. If you're looking away or anything like that, it won't unlock. In which they can take even further with this Optic ID, where it's like, okay, now we're gonna scan your face and your eyes to make sure it's really, really you. And then that way you'll be able to unlock your phone and then Apple Pay the $3,500 for the headset. Because Apple's all about security, and again, it's another marketing point, right? This is just something else they're adding to the table to convince you that this new iPhone 15 is the best, fastest, most secure device out there. And yes, there are other phones that have had similar features like this, but how it's explained to work on the Apple Vision Pro, it looks like Apple's taking that extra step with it to make it a little bit more secure. And these next two probably might not happen, but it would be really great if they did. I think everyone was happy and surprised when it was revealed that the Apple Vision Pro is running on a M2 chip and not like a A16 or A17 like mobile chip or anything like that. Like, this is a full-on computer that has a lot of power. And that got me thinking, like, okay, well, what if Apple surprises us and throws in that the iPhone 15 Pros and Ultras also will have maybe like an M2 chip? And as crazy as that sounds, we have heard that for whatever reason, these Pro models will be more expensive. And a lot of that focus has been on, oh, well, because of this periscope lens, it's gonna be, a lot harder and this and that. And there have been other reasons for that, right? But what if the reason is, one, because of these spatial photo and video cameras that they're adding, and if they're adding a little bit more power to their phones by adding that M2, maybe even if it's just an M1 chip, right? Because another big part of their conference was gaming and how they're really making a push to have developers port their games, their PC games, over to the Mac. And we've seen marketing for it with the iPads that had the M1 and now the M2 chip. The video game No Man's Sky that just came out on the Mac is also supposed to have an iPad version of it. It's not out yet, but we think that it's gonna be out pretty soon. So it could be a situation where these games can be ported to the Mac, iPad, and maybe even the iPhone for super gaming portability. And this other feature is how you actually navigate Apple Vision Pro. Apple says it works through eyes, hands, and voice. But on the top of the headset, it also has a button on one side and a digital crown on the other that's able to control some other things. They showed how if you turn the digital crown, you can kind of fade in and out like different like virtual worlds or rooms or whatever surroundings around you. And that's interesting because just a few videos ago, I talked about a patent of Apple's that showed them trying to find a way to include the digital crown on an iPad. And immediately I was like, that's wild. I don't think it's happening. I think they just, like to patent stuff just to say that they have it just in case. But seeing how it worked on the headset, I can easily see kind of like this 2-button situation being the future, like not right now, but maybe like later down the line, maybe the iPhone 16s or 17s, where you have just one button on the side, that's that action button that can do a whole bunch of different things. And then on the other side, it's just the digital crown that can be used to control the volume. You press it, it can do some other actions. Now all of a sudden, it doesn't sound as crazy. And now it's a unified kind of like mobile way of operating all your different devices. So yeah, most likely not a move with the iPhone 15, but I'm gonna be keeping an eye on this kind of like 2-button digital crown setup in the future. And there were also some little secrets I felt were hidden within iOS 17 itself. And the main one being standby mode, which is a new mode where if you turn your phone on the side, it puts it in this standby mode where it gives you quick glances and access to certain information and widgets which you can interact with, like your calendar. You can ask Siri certain things. You can see live events like sports. And the reason why I think this is interesting, because ever since Apple came out with the iPhone 10 line, kind of like how the iPhones look now that has the notch at the top, they got rid of a feature that I actually really liked, and that was landscape mode, where if you had like the bigger iPhones, the pluses, you could turn the phone on its side and it would go into landscape mode and kind of have more of like a tablet feel to it to take advantage of the bigger screen. And for whatever reason, with the iPhone 10 and up, they took away that feature. And now it only works in like certain apps and it's kind of wonky and weird. But I do miss being able to just kind of like navigate my phone, even just scrolling through the home screen. And so this whole standby mode got me thinking that like all these interactions and apps and things are working in landscape mode on all the phones, doesn't matter what size it is. So could it be a possibility that this landscape mode is going to come back in the new iPhone 15s, where it won't just be secluded to standby mode, but it will actually be part of the operating system? And then I started thinking, well, if that was the case, they probably just would have introduced it as an iOS 17 feature that all phones would be able to do. But again, the marketing, what if they reveal the phones and they're like, well, also what's cool about the iPhone 15, if you get this new model, when you go into landscape mode on these, you can now navigate in landscape. I know that's horrible that they would use that as a reason to upgrade, but you know, wouldn't put it past them. And especially including the interactive widgets, even on the home screens, and being able to do a lot more without having to go into an individual app. This just makes sense for landscape mode, especially if you were just getting really ridiculously big phones, which I personally hate. So using it in landscape kind of made me feel a little bit better. The bigger the device gets, I feel like it just makes more sense to use it on its side, you know, versus vertical. And with introducing landscape mode, will we see some sort of multitasking feature also coming to with these new phones, especially if they throw in maybe like an M1 or M2 chip that's a little bit more powerful, you know, go into landscape, you can now do like how it's on the iPad, splits two separate apps and be able to do different tasks at the same time. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but there have been times where I have flipped my phone to landscape and there's been this glitch where half of the app only went to one side of the phone, and where I was like, wait, is this kind of showing that like they want or are working on kind of like a split multitasking type situation? They just haven't like fully released it yet, but it's somehow like embedded in the code. Let me know if that's happened to you in the comments, because every time it does, I'm like, oh, I feel like they want to do it, but they're just not doing it for some reason. And the next software feature, which actually isn't a feature, but more of an app, the new journaling app that Apple introduced is going to be available in iOS 17. That is kind of their next step approach into mental health, where you can jot down how you're feeling based off of certain maybe memories, like photos that show up or recommended in the app. And I linked that to another topic I talked about in a previous video, where Apple may be working on a Apple Pencil specifically for the iPhone that will be a little bit smaller than the Apple Pencil that's out right now, and maybe not have all the bells and whistles, all the features, like having like the magnetic charger and things like that, but it would work in a similar way, but be more portable and coincide with the phone. Then I can see them showing that off in the demonstration, be like, oh, if you want to jot down your feelings in a more traditional way, here's the new Apple Pencil for iPhone. Even in their freeform app that's available now, you know, it's another way to quickly brainstorm ideas. Introducing this alongside the iPhone 15s could be the perfect time to do this. And for this last part, we're gonna go back to standby mode for a second. And this actually doesn't have to do with the iPhone, but the iPad, and what Apple's plans are for the future of home automation and their smart home hub. We've talked about that Apple is working on something to compete with Google and Alexa's offerings right now, but for whatever reason, you know, we still just got the HomePod. But they do want to introduce some type of device with the screen, but there's no telling how far out we are from seeing something like that. So to potentially kind of like put a band-aid on the situation, Apple may be working on some type of home dock that you can connect your iPad to that would then give the iPad the illusion of being a smart home hub. So you have all your quick access to your home automations, widgets, things like that, while connected to this dock that may have a speaker where you can play music, hear Siri, pretty much do all the things that like an Echo Show can do. And they're already laying the groundwork for that to be a nice, easy experience with standby mode. There could just be a special version of that just for all your home app widgets, where you can quickly control all your appliances. And we're already seeing this in play with the Google Pixel tablet, where they literally have a home base right now that does the exact same thing. The tablet snaps onto that base magnetically, has a speaker, connects to it, you can make calls, listen to music. So it makes sense for Apple to get in this space now by including this product instead of just waiting until whenever their actual like smart home hub, whatever that's going to be, comes out. And especially if you pair this with the iPad mini, that's like the perfect setup, right? And now you've created a situation where more people are going to want to buy iPads. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you agree? Did Apple kind of like reveal a little bit of these features? Do you think this could actually happen with the iPhone 15s? Do you think I'm just talking crazy? Let me know. And that's all the Apple news I got for the day. I'll see y'all in the next one.